to our session. This is our family Bible and breakfast session, session number 49. Welcome. The question we started with today is, what does power mean to you? For those of you who are joining us, feel free to let us know in the comments. For those of us here, we've already read ability, substance, responsibility. We wrote strength, spirit, authority, protection, above many, leadership, control, source, and hierarchy. So there's some of the answers we had. Feel free to throw in the chat the answers you have as well as we jump into the session. All right, so we spoke about emotion, and we said that emotion can be broken down as energy in motion, okay? So is everybody comfortable with that? Does everybody understand how it's true? Like, when I get, let me start breaking this down because I think it's going to help you, right? So sometimes we have energy in motion, right? Energy in motion. When I say energy in motion, what comes to your mind? Anyone? Anything? Electricity. Something flying. Something spinning. All right, so here's what's beautiful. All three answers symbolize movement, right? When I think of energy in motion, I just think about a car. I can't say that because it's too vague. I literally think, boom. You know when a car just goes, boom? That's what I think about, right? So what does that describe? That describes fast or racy. Everyone happy with that? Yes? Yeah. So here's a question. Do any of us ever have some fast or racy emotions? You see, here's the thing that's interesting. When you start to understand that emotions are energy in motion, you can start to look at the different kinds of motion and recognize your different emotions. So there are fast and racy emotions, like heated, blood pumping, anger. That can cause someone to move so fast, so racy, that they're no longer thinking. And as one of my coaches, Dr. Myron Golden, usually says, he says, when the emotions go up, the intelligence goes down. Why? Because the symbolization of emotions going up is a symbolization of the energy in motion going faster. So here's what's interesting. When you drive a car, the faster you get, the less you can rely on your intellect. It's the same as in a plane. When you're in a plane, right? If you're into aviation, or if you're a pilot, if you've done any pilot training, you know that the biggest thing pilots are afraid of is not any of the apparatus braking. The biggest thing they're afraid of is them catching something called vertigo. Vertigo is when you lose consciousness of the height that you actually are. So you might feel like you're standing when really you're flying, or feel like you're flying when really you're standing, or feel like you're 10 feet up when you're only 1 foot up. Now, the moment I've just described that like that to you, you guys should all understand, oh, I get why a pilot doesn't want that, right? And what pilots are taught is the moment, if you ever feel like you have vertigo, you should always rely on your apparatus. Always rely on it. If it tells you you're 20 feet up, oh, I'm 20 feet up no matter how I feel. Does this make sense? When you connect it with energy emotion. Because it's the same thing. If I'm in a state of dis-ease, something that should be easy for me is no longer easy for me, I have to rely on my controls because I can't control myself. Does that make sense? And hopefully some of you are connecting this with emotion and realizing, yo, it's true. Sometimes I've got some racy emotions. Sometimes I want to just go and do this and go and do that. But I should actually rely on my controls when I can't control myself. Does that make sense? Now, what happens when you don't have any controls in place? Then you can't control yourself and you've got nothing to be controlled by. Does this make sense? This is why some people have problems, because they don't have the apparatus available. They don't have maybe the community available. They don't have the things instilled, the principles, the practices, the processes available, but yet they still got their energy operating in motion. Does this make sense, right? All right, cool. Let's go deeper. So energy in motion is a way we can think of emotions. And sometimes we have some racy emotions. Sometimes we have some very slow and calm emotions. Right? Because sometimes you have some very slow and calm motion. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's interesting to think about this and realize, wow, sometimes I can be feeling things that are slow and calm. But sometimes equally, I can be feeling things that are fast and racy. And I can equally be feeling a whole bunch of things in between. Right? Everybody good with that? Yeah. So here's an interesting question. If emotions can be described as energy in motion, for me, that might be like metal in motion. So if we have an aeroplane, that would be considered metal in motion, right? If we had a car, that would be considered metal in motion, right? We're on the same page. All right, so here's the question. When you have metal in motion, is metal the driver? Okay, no. When my car's in motion, my car's not the driver. Does that make sense? All right, so let's go deeper. When you have metal in motion, if the metal's not the driver, surely that means that the metal doesn't choose its direction. Does this make sense? Because some of us think, oh, I had some fast and racy emotions and thus I ended up here. Instead of realizing that, yeah, you can have the fast and racy emotion, energy in motion, but it doesn't make that emotion or the energy in motion choose your direction. Does this make sense? And this is why some people can get livid, right? Or the Bible says, be angry and sin not. Yo, how can some people be angry and sin not? Because they are not allowing the emotion to determine the direction. Does this make sense? Yeah. So we have to be wise as doves, harmless as serpents, harmless as doves, as the Bible says, and start to understand this so we can execute this in our life. We can be people that are wise enough to know, you know what, I'm going through this situation, I've got these racing emotions going on, or I've got these calm and relaxed emotions going on, but guess what? I'm still going to end up in the direction God has ordained for me to end up in. Does this make sense? Yeah? All right. So we're going to jump into this, and it's going to be very interesting for many of you, right? Especially the example we're going to have in a moment. So, okay, show of hands for those of you who know who Denzel Washington is. All right, cool. So you've heard of Denzel Washington, right? And on YouTube, just let us know in the chat. Just write me or whatever, so I know that you guys know who Denzel Washington is, right? So Denzel Washington, I believe recently, it may be recent, but recently a film came out called yeah, you can please, called Gladiator 2, right? Called Gladiator 2. Now, here's a trick question, right? For bonus points, right? If there was a Gladiator 2, what do you think came before that? Gladiator 1. You guys have got it. I've got a good audience here, right? So Gladiator 1. So here's another question. Anybody heard of Russell Crowe? Okay, awesome. That's most of the people here. And guys, again, you let us know. You got the camera all with you there. No, it's cool. You're good. But you guys let us know on YouTube with a yes in the chat as well, right? So Russell Crowe was the kind of key character in Gladiator 1. Denzel Washington is the key character, effectively being used for marketing anyway, in Gladiator 2, right? Everyone happy with that, right? Yeah. We're talking about a movie right now, okay? It will serve. All right, so here's the thing that's interesting. There's a scene in Gladiator 1 where Russell Crowe is the gladiator and he's fighting, okay? He's fighting, he's destroying people, he's tearing things up, right? And then he looks to the emperor, the king at the time, he looks to the audience and he says this statement. He says, "Are you not entertained?" Okay? Are you not entertained? Right? That's like the flagship line for that film, right? Are you not entertained? Right? And that line is deeper than that line. Okay? And I suggest that's part of the reason why they use that line for the strong marketing at the time. But that line is deeper than that line. And we're going to dig a little bit into that line, right? He said, "Are you not entertained?" Okay? So I submit to you something. I submit to you there's only two things that can take place when you engage with content. Now, back in the day, right, the gladiators are made up observation of the old school Colosseum fights, right? Okay? And that was used for entertainment, which is why Russell Crowe, flagship gladiator, is saying, "Are you not entertained?" Because it was all about entertainment, right? Obviously, they were doing very gruesome things, but that was entertainment for them back then. Today, we have different forms of entertainment, right? Anyone want to give me some of the forms of entertainment we have today? Yeah, basketball. My younger brother's a professional athlete. He used to play basketball. Theater, yes. You got it. Football. Ice skating. Let's take two more. Boxing, yes. Damani, come on. Kickboxing, all right, cool. Films, cool, right? So all of these are now these modern forms of entertainment. We with it, right? So I just said to you, I submit to you, there's only two things that can happen when you engage with content. Now, the basketball, the football, the ice skating, the boxing, the kickboxing, all of these things, we might say are forms of entertainment. But they're all content. They're all content, right? This is why the BBC makes hundreds of thousands of millions or billions of pounds off of all of these things you guys just mentioned, right? This is why NBC, ABC, all of these businesses, these companies, these management organizations make all of this money, because it's content that they've packaged, curated, and now produce. Is this correct? Right? Okay. So a good question is, well, what's the other thing that can happen based on content? One thing is entertainment. What's the other thing? Education. Boom, you've got it, right? So let's start breaking this down. From all content, you can either be entertained or educated. Okay? Now, someone, right? I don't know if many people could do this, but someone watches a boxing match and learns something from it. Okay? But here's the thing. Do you think it's easier to watch a boxing match and learn something from it, or to pick up a book and learn something from the book? I'd say the book, right? I'd say the book, right? That's my opinion, right? But I could be wrong, right? Now, it's all about how you're wired, really. And I'm not saying this to say everyone is going to be the book. It's about how you're wired. Because some people watch things and they just, boom, they catch lessons. Some people read things, boom, they catch lessons. Like, people are different, right? Let's bear that in mind. And God made us all, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is not to say, oh, one is right and one is wrong. It's to say, let's start understanding which way we're wired. Because if we don't understand which way we're wired, we're going to go into an environment thinking we're going to be educated, and instead, we're only going to be entertained. Does this make sense? And what you want to do is you want to go into environments, even environments made to entertain you, and walk out educated. Does this make sense? Okay? And not everyone can do that. I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude, but I'm going to tell the truth. The rude truth is most people can't do that. Most people can't go into an entertainment environment and come out with education. Most people can't. And here's a little pat on the back for you, right? A little kind of heads up shortcut for you, right? Don't try to be the person who can't do what most people can do unless you know you're called to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, and some of you are a bit foggy-eyed right now, so let me explain what that means. That means, like, when I was like 19 and I got serious with Christ, I had a guy who's like a friend of mine. He used to say to me, God's called me to go into the clubs, man. He's called me to go into the clubs and teach these people about Christ. And guess what I knew? God didn't call me to do that. Like, I spent enough time in the clubs when I was young. Does this make sense, right? So I'm not going in the clubs. I'm not trying to be the person who can go into the entertainment scene and try and get educated. No, that's not me. I know that's not my calling. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying it's not your calling. I'm just saying I know it's not my calling. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying, if we're listening, is, like I said a minute ago, my objective here is to get you clued up on how it all works so you can start determining, oh, I'm supposed to be in that club, or I'm never going back in that club. Does this make sense, right? Okay, because everyone's going to have a different story. Now, let's go deeper. So we have Russell Crowe, who asked this question, are you not entertained? Why did he ask this question? Because the question is deeper than the question is. The question states the only purpose that most of those people were there were not to be educated, they were there to be entertained. Even at the cost of people's lives. Even at the cost of people's lives. Now, the reason I say that again is because many people don't realize that 99.9, maybe even 100, if I want to be super bold, right? 100% of entertainment is created even at the cost of your life. Even at the cost of your life. You have people who go into certain entertainment fields, actors, right? And the only way they leave is bipolar. Or the only way they leave is through suicide. Or the only way they leave is through some kind of chronic illness. In America, they've got this whole big CTE issue. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, right? CTE is a neurological disease, right? Where your brain is basically taken over. And this takes place for people predominantly because it's very heavily associated with boxing and American football. So it's the American football world that's really kind of brought this thing out in the last kind of 8 years, right? But basically what it is your head's getting hit too many times. Okay, your head's getting hit too many times in the name of sport, in the name of entertainment. So like, because I know some of you will hear me and you'll hear me say, yes, you know, entertainment is 100% set up even at the cost of someone's life, and not realize, you know, people are actually giving their lives to this thing. Okay? And giving your life is not always about giving your life physically. Are we all on the same page about that? Because obviously we read the Bible. What does the Bible say? It says that you're supposed to give your life to be a follower of Christ. And he's not talking about like necessarily the physical thing. That's like the last thing on the totem pole. He's talking about first and foremost, you want to follow me spiritually. Then you want to follow me in your soul. How do we know that? Romans 12 verse 2, it says, don't be conformed to the way of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So there's a spirit level, there's a soul level, and then we move to the physical level. Last, it's the last thing on the totem pole. Why is it the last thing on the totem pole? It's the last thing on the totem pole because we are spirits, we have souls, and we live in a body. Okay? We are spirits. We're not bodies, we're spirits. And most people don't realize this. So most people do everything to do with their body without realizing, no, it starts with the spirit. You want a new job and you're checking your body. Oh, you know, it takes me 20 minutes to get to work. No, that's a bodily conduction in terms of what you're doing. Like that's bodily. Like, why don't you check in the spirit? Why don't you ask yourself, like, Heavenly Father, like, is this for me? Is this part of the purpose? Is this part of the plan? Are you guys with me, right? So once you understand the hierarchy, someone said this earlier, once you understand the hierarchy of how things work, you know how you want to operate. Do you want to operate led by the flesh, which is how many people operate? Or do you want to operate led by the spirit, which is how, as believers, we are encouraged and admonished to actually operate? All right? This is making sense, right? So cool. Let's go deeper. All right, cool. So, Russell Crowe, are you not entertained? All right. So, there are many forms of content. Okay, just to get deeper on this, there's many forms of content. So, you guys mentioned the different forms of entertainment, theater, boxing, etc. Right? But some of the forms of content, for example, are reading. Okay, listening. Sometimes you might listen to an audiobook. Watching. Sometimes we might be watching TV, etc. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through this because of the time, but I'm just going to share this with you as a seed. I've spoke here a few months ago about gates, right? And the fact that we have different gates. We have eye gates, we have ear gates, right? And the Bible talks about gates as well, right? And I shared with you guys, based on Hebrew culture, what a gate is. A gate is an exchange place, right? It's an exchange place. It's where trade happens, where business takes place. Throughout the Bible, whenever you see gates, you should always think exchange. You should think, what's exchanging? What's taking place here? What's coming in? What's going out? That's gates throughout the Bible are notoriously known for exchange places. It's where business is done. So if your eyes are eye gates, what does that mean happens at your eyes? Business is being done. If your ears are ear gates, what does that mean happens at your ears? Business is being done. Things are being traded in your ears. Does this make sense? You see, most people don't realize this, which is why. Do you want to say something, Emmanuel? I'm sorry, Emmanuel. Elijah, go for it. Can someone give him the microphone, wherever it is? Thank you, Joseph.
What was I gonna say? Wait. Oh, and your soul's a gate.
Your soul is a gate. I like that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate you, champion. Yeah. So, guys, at gates, exchanges are taking place. Business is being done. And if we don't know that, we won't be more meticulous about what we watch. We won't be more meticulous about what our children watch. We won't be more meticulous about what we hear. We won't be more meticulous about what our children hear. You know, like some people leave their children with some people who let their children hear some things that their children shouldn't have heard in the first place. But you know why they do that? Because they don't recognize that the ears of that child, like the ears of me as an adult, are gates. Business is being done at those ears. Business is being done at those eyes. And this is why I'm sharing with you what some of the different forms of content are. Like, I remember Jim Rohn, he used to say this all the time. He used to say, you should learn to read and you should read a lot. You should read a good book. He goes, but he said, someone asked him at a seminar once, hey, Jim, do you just read anything? And he says, no. He said, if you were hungry, would you go all the way through a bin in order to get a little bone of fish? And the guy was like, no, I'd never do that. He's like, well, that's what you do when you read a trashy novel saying I'm going to get educated in some way. Right? And that's the reason I'm saying this is because I said to you guys a minute ago, a lot of entertainment is 100% at the cost of someone's life, not necessarily there to educate you. So you may get educated, you may find a bone of fish in the bin, but you had to go through the whole bin to get to there. Does this make sense? And you could have just chosen, well, you know what, I'm not going to go through the bin. I'm going to find another way to do this, right? Which is in your power, right? So there's two forms of content. Sorry, there are multiple forms of content, and there are two ways that content basically can be delivered to us. One is through means of entertainment, one is through means of education. Now, one of the big things that's been happening in our era, in our generation, which is why we should be really thankful about this and blessed about this, and it's not new as in, oh, it's only the last 10 years. It's probably been going on for about over 500 years. Like, it's a very long-term thing, but we're seeing it more. We're seeing the emergence of this more, and that is the mix between the two, right? So they call that edutainment. Okay, edutainment. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time with high-level YouTube creators, you'll hear them talk about this term. Oh, I'm an edutainment creator. Okay? What's an edutainment creator? It's someone who entertains you whilst they educate you. Does that make sense? It's someone who entertains you whilst they educate you. Or it's someone who educates you whilst they entertain you. Does that make sense? Okay? So the entertainment part is to keep you watching, but the education part is because I want you to become someone else. And guys, hopefully you understand what I mean when I say that, because the purpose of education is to help you become someone else. The purpose of education is not for you to stay where you are with your same problems. The purpose of education is for you to change. Positive or negative. Are we all with that, right? Because if I educate you on a doctrine that's not right for you, like whatever, like extremist Islam, let me just use that as an example. Like, I'm still educating you. I'm still turning a light on, even though it might not be the right light for you. Is what I'm saying making sense? So education's purpose is to change you. And someone might be like, oh, but Samuel, come on, you can't be saying that. You saying that because you just used to be a teacher? You saying that because you studied a master's in teaching? No, the reason I'm saying it is because Romans 12 verse 2 says that. It says, don't be conformed to the way of the world. Conform means change this way. It says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So what does that mean? When my mind gets renewed, when I receive new information that turns my mind from where it is to renew, a new, I become transformed. I become someone else. Metamorphosis, when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, when that cocoon process, that is education, that's enlightenment, that's changing. Does this all make sense, right? So the point I'm making is, if you understand that content comes in many shapes and sizes and different forms and factors, and you also understand that it's only two outcomes from that content, I'm either going to be entertained or educated, here's a good question to ask yourself. Why did I go? Why did I turn it on? Why did I press play? Because some of us are pressing play to be entertained and are upset when we only got educated. Does that make sense? Just think about that for a moment. Think about it, because that's what's happening in life. Imagine that, right? Expectations. They set the bar for many of the things in our life. And how can you have more power in your life if you're not being deeper educated in your life? Now, guys, please, I just got to say this. I know there's some people who are brand new here, right? But by education, I don't mean a degree, a college certificate. I don't mean that, right? And obviously we used the radical extremist Islam a moment ago as an example. Like, I'm just talking about real education. Here's one that someone probably weren't expecting. Like, there is political ideology education that takes place every single day through means of news and propaganda, right? Some of us don't realize that. Some of us who are plugged into the news, like how Neo was plugged into the Matrix, some of us are receiving ideologies which are educating us on how we should see the government. You see, I heard something interesting recently. I heard the current Prime Minister of the UK is getting rid of the NHS, the National Health System. Did anyone else hear that recently? Yeah. Is it rid of the NHS? Okay, sorry. Go on, Sam. Educate me, please.
Not the NHS, the bureaucracy, the NHS England is a separate entity. It's going back to government. Just read the headline and then, yeah.
All right, that's helpful. That's super helpful, right? So, guys, I want us to be bearing in mind. Let's even use what Sam's just given there, right? The headlines come out. People read the headlines. That's education. Does that make sense? Someone else says, oh, let's go a bit deeper. Let's find out what's going on. That's another form of education. But all of the education is transforming you. Education is making you have a belief, have a statement. Oh, this is what's going to happen, or that's what's going to happen, or this is what I'm preparing for now. Does this make sense? So this is why we have to get very well prepared when we... Because if you walk into the theater and you do get educated, but you only came to get entertained, you're going to walk away disappointed. If you press play on the audio book and you do get entertained, but you wanted to get educated, again, you're going to be disappointed. Makes sense, yeah? All right, now, here's one of the big mistakes I see many people make, and this, again, is stopping them from having power, right? So here's a quick question. Let's do this before we go into this big mistake, right? Out of the two of these, today we're talking about the portal of power. Which of these do you think puts you on a better trajectory to the portal of power? Being entertained or being educated? All right, so that's a resounding educate, right? That's good. So what we're going to do, we're going to go from content to education. Okay, is that fair? Because that's the path towards power. Does that make sense? Now, I'll give it to you later. All right, cool. So that's helpful. Now, here's a big mistake many people make as they're trying to develop more power in their life. They realize that they need to be educated, and then there's only two options that happen when you get educated, right? in terms of natural human beings, know everything? Okay, so if no one knows everything, is anyone fully enlightened? No. And what you will find in this world, especially with a lot of sects, S-E-C-T-S, right? Cults, philosophies, religions, you will find a path of enlightenment. That's what they'll sell you, a path of enlightenment, where more and more you will become more and more enlightened, right? Now this is one of the things, like, I don't know about you, like, I'm an intellectual, right? I think I'd be classified as an intellectual. I love reading, like, I'm into philosophy, I'm into science, as you guys know. I could be wrong, right? If I'm wrong, if the definition of intellectual doesn't fit me, let me know in the comments, right? So I think I'm an intellectual, but guess what one of the most fascinating was when I got serious about Christ at the age of no? It was recognizing that, Samuel, as intellectual as you are, you're never going to know everything. The world has the opposite problem. Everyone else in the world's problem is, oh, I need to know everything. I need to know everything. This is why we fall for EastEnders or Dead Enders or whatever you want to call it, right? This is why we fought for that as children, because we wanted to know what was happening with Pat and with Frank and with what other names, right? That's as far as I can go, right? But this is why we fall for those shows. We fall for those shows because those shows are trying to make believe, vicariously put us in an environment where we see what's happening with the neighbor and the neighbor's neighbor and the neighbor's auntie and the neighbor's sister. Because we want to know everything, instead of realizing I can't know everything. Now, here's a good question. If you recognize you can't know everything, what would you focus on trying to know? See, that's good. That's good, something, right? But what would your something be? It'd be something hopefully related to what God's called you to do. It wouldn't be everything. It wouldn't be, yo, this guy's, he's a music engineer. I need to know how to put the bass and treble on that track, right? I wouldn't be interested in that unless it's part of my calling. Does that make sense? But I'm gonna give you a little shockwave now, right? Hopefully this is gonna help someone. So what does that make Marcus to me now? Helpful. The word in my head is necessary. Another word is blessing. You see this? You see, this is why the world's messed up. The world's messed up because everyone's bought a path of enlightenment. Even people in church. Many people are going to church saying they're Christian, but buying an enlightenment path. And therefore, they don't see they need you. They don't see your value. They don't see that, bro, this guy, there's no engineer like him. I need him. I can't do what he does, even if I tried. You know why? Because I can't know everything. You see, I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking there's people out there who are going to say to themselves, nah, bro, you know what? I can learn the stuff Samuel knows from the Bible. Okay, bro, but I've had a 20-year head start on you. Like, that's real talk. That's not me trying to take the mic. Like, I've had a 20-year head start on you. Bro, it's going to be hard, bro. But here's what we do. We sit down for an hour with someone. We hear them talk for an hour, and we think that's all they had to give us for an hour. Instead of realizing, in order to give you what I gave you, I must have had 10 hours of stuff to think through. Does that make, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Like, you see the same thing, like my younger brother, he's a professional athlete, retired now. When he used to play basketball, it's the same thing. Like, you can have a player coming up to you, and the guy can just cross you one way, and you're like, yo, you're buckled, your ankles are buckled, you're on the floor. And you're thinking, how could he do that to me? Oh yeah, I'm gonna prepare so he'll never do that to me again. 3 months later, you have another game. And something else happens to you. It just goes around the back and your ankles are still buckled. And you're like, how did that happen? Because he is not the one move you saw him perform. Does this make sense? You just saw him perform what worked at that time based on the signals you gave him. But when he saw new signals, oh, you got some new remedy. Does this make sense? How can we do that? I tell you how we do that. When we stop focusing on enlightenment and we start focusing on empowerment. You know, empowerment is, I think it was Omar who said it, responsibility. It's knowing how to respond with ability. That's what empowerment is. When you study, the Bible says study to show yourself approved, right? You see, think about that. Study, not to say I know this. Study, not to say I read this. Study, not to say, oh, I've read all of that. Study to show yourself approved. That means I have to be able to be empowered, not just enlightened. Imagine if we live in a world where there are a group of people who are telling you, let's get enlightened. But as enlightened as you are, you can't do anything because you're not empowered. And we started today by me saying, guys, I'm going to show you the path, the portal to power. And we're literally looking at it already. And we're going to keep going. But I want you guys to understand, it starts with the content you're consuming. That's where it starts with. And that content determines whether you're being entertained or educated. But then when you're being educated, you have to be conscious to understand, I'm not trying to be enlightened by this. This ain't about me getting some good feelings. You know, I remember there was a big church dilemma fad season where everyone was like, yeah, man, you just go to church and when they're worshiping and you, oh, yeah, and you, oh, yeah, and you, yeah. Bro, energy in motion, brother. Energy in motion. Just because your energy is moving in a motion doesn't mean you're going to the right direction. But when you understand how things work, you realize, no, I'm not going for enlightenment. I'm going for empowerment. I'm going to be empowered. I'm going to have a power when I leave here that I didn't have when I got here. Is this helpful for someone? All right, let's go deeper because I need to give you guys some truth. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 12, right? I need to show you guys how this works. So just coming back to this so you guys understand, the mistake most people make when they understand they need to be educated is by focusing on enlightenment from their education instead of empowerment from their education. Okay? Does that make sense, right? Whew. Let me even share this, right? Empowerment. Jesus shows up and they said, this guy speaks with authority. Why am I saying this? Because I want you to know that when you're empowered, it will even show up in your words. Does that make sense? There are people that talk and you're like, yo, this guy knows what he's talking about. Or yo, this woman needs to get that promotion. I shouldn't even apply for that promotion with someone like her in this organization. There are people that can talk and give you that feeling. Why? Because they have power. And power is not only shown from, oh, he can bench press 290 kg, which is what we've been raised to think. That's what power is. Oh, he's the world's strongest man. No, he's not. If his wife can start crying and he will break down. I don't know if that analogy makes sense to you, but how can this guy be the world's strongest man? Yo, we need to get out of this room. We've got the world's strongest man apparently in the room, and we've said to him, bro, break the door, bro. And his wife starts a panic attack. No, why is the door? She's claustrophobic, for example, right? She starts crying, and he's like, oh, I can't touch the door. I've got to take care of her. Bro, we ain't got the world's strongest man in the room. We got a man who wants to console with his wife in the room. Is everyone seeing the point? This is how our lives are sometimes. Sometimes we've got the worldly label of something good, but we don't actually have the biblical label of that good thing because we don't understand the biblical definition of that good thing. Make sense? Joseph, if you can, give Elijah the mic. You want to say something, yeah? Yeah? He's good, man. Go on, chap.
God's the world's strongest man.
I love that. He said God is the world's strongest man. Yeah, which literally means, you saying that, literally means, there's a verse in the Bible that says the same thing you said. It says, we should be looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, which literally means we should be focused on Jesus. Do you get what I mean? Because he's how God decided to show up as a man. So that's powerful. All right, cool. Let's do this. Proverbs chapter 12, right? And we're going to just start unpacking a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to give you the 3 stances you can take, and hopefully this is all going to help you guys. We're going to get started in, I don't want to do it backwards. All right, let's do it the right way around. We'll do it backwards, but we'll read it the right way around. Let's go to verse 8, okay? Proverbs chapter 12, we're in verse 8. And I'm going to show you these 3 characteristics, 3 positions you can take, and obviously, hopefully you want to take the right ones, right? So Proverbs chapter 12. Does anyone want to read? All right, cool. Damani. And we'll have Omar read 9. Okay, so let's go. Just verse 8 and 9, and hopefully you guys will be like Acts 12. Yeah, Damani, can you take the mic? Sorry. Hopefully you guys will be like Acts 17, the Berean church, and go study this deeper at home and see if this stuff is true and all of that stuff. Let's go. So we're in Acts chapter 12. Sorry, we're in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 8. Let's go.
I'm just doing 8.
Yeah, 8, and then Omar will do 9. Hopefully we'll get the mic over there quickly. Let's go.
A man is commended according to his intelligence. A twisted mind is held up to contempt.
All right, cool. And then verse 9.
So I'm reading the New King James.
Cool. What translation was that? All right, cool. I think I am familiar with that one, yeah.
So yeah, verse 9. Better is the one who is slighted but has a servant than he who honors himself but lacks bread.
All right, cool, right? So what you should have seen here, which is quite powerful, is we've seen 3 characters in these 2 verses. Okay? 3 characters in 2 verses. And we're gonna start unpacking them. Joseph, Elijah's giving you the mic, right? So I'm going to draw them out so we can basically go through them. And guys, I'm drawing all men just so that, you know, there's no sexism. And the reason I'm saying that is because there's 3 characters, right? So if I drew a woman, it'll be man, woman, man. And yeah, I don't want to outnumber anyone, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, it's not sexism. All right, so let's go. All right, cool. So we've got these 3 characters, right? So I'm going to read from the King James Version, right? Proverbs chapter 12, I'm reading first verse 8. It says, a man shall be commended, all right? Now, what does commended mean? Praise. Yeah, praise. All right, so could I say to commend someone is to lift them up? Yeah? A man shall be commended, raised up, praised, lifted up, right? Why? How? By what? According to his wisdom. Okay? The translation that the man was reading said intelligence, right? According to his wisdom. Okay? Now, a man shall be commended according to his wisdom. So we can draw stuff here. And you guys know I like to illustrate this stuff because it's the easiest way to see exactly what the Bible's saying, right? So this is telling you whatever level you're at, you can go up a level based on wisdom. Does that make sense? A man shall be commended, lifted up, based on, according to his wisdom. So if we're on this portal of power, and we're saying, well, hold on a minute, how do I generate more power? How do I get more power? Like the answer, do you guys want the quick answer? Yeah? Anyone want the quick answer? I like shortcuts. Anyone? Yeah? Proverbs 18 verse 1. Here's the quick answer, and then I'll come back to you, right? We're still going to do what we're doing. I just feel like someone wants the quick answer, right? So let me give you the quick answer. Proverbs 18 verse 1, right? I find this one of the most interesting scriptures in the Bible, but this is going to help you. I'll read it. Proverbs 18 verse 1. It says, through desire, okay? Desire for me is like energy in motion. Because you want it, because you really want it, because you're hungry for it. In the words of Les Brown, you got to be hungry because you are on it, right? Through desire, what does it say? It says, a man having separated himself seeketh and intermeddleth with all wisdom. That's the cheat code. The cheat code is, I want my life to be better. I'm fed up of this stress. I'm fed up of whatever it is like. I see this better path for me and my future. So what do? See, most of yous who've been here before, you know when I quote Proverbs 18 verse 1, I'm usually going to talk to you about what I call the path to progress. And I usually explain that the path to progress starts with first you have to learn. Then after you learn, you then begin to turn. You turn away from the things that you've done before. Then you become stern. I've been doing this so long. Everybody knows me only for this thing. And then you get to earn. But the problem we have in society is most people want to earn when they haven't even turned. Most people are like, no, I should be rich already, bro. I've been doing this for 8 years. Yeah, but 8 years doesn't mean you've turned from the old things. 8 things doesn't mean you're recognized as stern in this thing. Does this all make sense? So there's a path to progress. And that whole path to progress, all 4 levels, all 4 layers are seen clearly in Proverbs 18 verse 1. A man through desire, having separated himself, seeketh and intermeddleth with all manner of wisdom. That means I'll read every book, any book to get what I need. That means I'll go through any program, no matter what. Like, here's the thing that's beautiful about Proverbs 18 verse 1. It doesn't talk about money. But if you say to someone, hey, bro, you know what? You want to be an engineer? It's going to cost you £8 million. Oh, bro, you know that's expensive. First thing the brother's talking about is money. But the Bible doesn't say anything about money. It says seeketh and intermeddleth. Do you know what that means? That means when it's worth it, I've got to get it. This is people's problem. People have been so confused by the world into thinking it's not about whether it's worth it or not. It's about whether I can afford it or not. Life's got nothing to do with whether you can afford it. Why? I feel like I'm doing some cash flow creation challenge training here right now. Listen, let me tell you why, right? It's real quick. I'm going to make this real quick, right? Let's say a guy, right? Let's call him... Sorry, I was going to do Elon Musk's name backwards there, but let's not do that. Let's say Elon Musk comes out with a Cybertruck, right? And let's say he says the Cybertruck is £100,000 to buy, okay? So Elon Musk, I usually draw this. I'm not going to draw it. You have to see it in your head, right? Elon Musk, person, releases Cybertruck, car, right? You see those 2 pictures in your head, right? And then he says £100,000. So you see the price tag, right? Is it possible for people to say, I can't afford it? Yes, it is possible for them to say it. Is it accurate for any human being, even someone in the slums of Mumbai in India to say, I can't afford it? Is it accurate for them to say that? The answer is no. Why is the answer no? Let me tell you why. Elon Musk is a what? A man, a human being. And the person who's poor in the slums of Mumbai in India is a what? A man, a human being. Which means within that human being is the same capacity to create as Elon Musk utilized to create to sell them something for £100,000. Does this make sense? Which means that person can go create something and sell it for £200,000 and use half to buy that car. Does this make sense? You will not see that if you don't see the way I explained earlier that, bro, I don't know everything. I know what I know. And because I know what I know, and I know I can learn more, I should learn more about the thing that God's called me to learn. That's what makes me an asset in a community. Does this make sense? You see, too many people are happy to be commodities in a community. They're happy to try to learn a little bit of everything and not stand out because they don't know anything. Instead of decide to learn a lot about a little thing and stand out because they're the only person who knows close to everything. Imagine, guys, listen, I've been saying this for years, right? People are paid based on specialism. Okay, let me say this. This principle is so old, they've tried to hide it. They can't even hide it. If you go to a university, okay, and you go get a BSc or a BA, a degree, a graduate level degree, right? You are going to get X amount of money in the marketplace. Okay? You go get an MSc or an MA, that's a master's level qualification. You are going to get a different level of money in the marketplace. Why? Because you've slightly specialized a little bit more. You go get a PhD, an EdD, whatever at the doctoral level, you are going to generate more revenue. Why? You have specialized more. Now, let's take it out of the quote-unquote conventional education, okay, the scamiversity, and let's put it into the real world. In the real world, do you think that same principle doesn't apply? Of course it does. You're dabbling, making websites for people. People are going to pay you a certain amount of money. But when you become the world's expert on color and understanding which colors cause people to press buttons, you are not going to get paid the same as a brother who just makes websites. How many people you know who are ready to go that deep in order to get paid? Not many people. That's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. You see the same thing in sports. There are athletes who are like, no, bro, okay, they said this of Kobe Bryant. The guy would do thousands of free throw shots. Now we see Steph Curry turning his education into entertainment. And we're getting fooled, thinking that it's entertainment, but not realizing he can only perform that level of entertainment because of his level of education. Oh, that's hot. Think about that. I'm so educated, I can do certain things that entertain you, but you can't even see that in order to do that thing, in order to shoot a ball from in the stands, bro, I had to have done that 100,000 times. And just because you see me do it once, what? Yo, he's special, bro. Yeah, he is special. Special at practicing. Because he's willing to practice that same one thing again and again and again when we're not. So we don't believe any human being has the capacity to do that because we haven't executed our capacity to do that. Does this make sense? All right, so let's go back to Proverbs 12. Sorry, I got a bit excited. Proverbs 18 gets me a bit excited. All right, Proverbs 12, right? We're going to read we read verse 8. I'm going to read it again, right? So we saw a man is commended, lifted up through means of his wisdom. So what we see is that wisdom is the elevator that takes us up, right? Wisdom is the elevator that takes us up. Let's go deeper. So it says, I'm going to read 8 again because I'm in the middle of it. So you hear all of it. A man shall be commended according to his wisdom, but he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised. Okay? Now, most people don't realize what this means, right? Despised, if you're being despised, that means you're being pulled down. You're being pulled down. So we just learned something very powerful from one verse. What have we learned? We've learned there's a lift in life that can take people up or down. It can get you up through means of wisdom or down when you're despised, right? So what is it that takes them down? Verse 8, but he that is of a perverse heart. So perversity within you takes you down in the lift of life. Does that make sense? If someone's of a perverse heart, he will be despised. He'll be pushed down. So the lift of life is taking you up based on your wisdom, or pulling you down based on whatever other things in your heart. In this regard, perversity. Okay? Does anyone know what perversity is? Okay? To be perverse is basically, it's another way of saying to pervert something. Someone who sees things pervertedly. Okay? What does pervertedly mean? Pervertedly means out of order. You don't see things the way they're supposed to be. Now, if you remember earlier on, I said to you guys, when people are getting educated, most of them try to get enlightened. And what did I explain enlightenment is? It's you thinking, oh, now I see how it works. But if you think you see how it works and it doesn't actually work like that, can you see how you have a perverted view? And this is what's happening in life. People haven't got a clue, but they think they've got a clue. Like I see people do this all the time, right? They look at someone who's got, let's say, 1 million views on a video online, right? And they're like, oh, I could do that. But it's like, bro, you wouldn't even know the first thing to do. Like I'm being, like, you can do the actions the human being is doing. Yes, you can. But you have no idea why that video's got 1 million. Like, if I even ask you, why has that video even got that many views? Oh, yeah, because the way he kicked the ball. No, bro. It's got nothing to do. The ball's got nothing to do with it. The piece of entertainment was not it. It was how it was framed. It was the fact that they only used 2 seconds before they cut to the next thing, which psychologically made your brain think, okay, I need to see what's next. The level of education is so deep, you're stuck in the entertainment. Does this make sense? This is, look, guys, let me just say this to you, right? Can I encourage everyone here to get that good at something, please? Please. Please. Like, let me tell you why. Because God is. God's that good. God's that good that millions upon billions of human beings are walking on this earth, stuck in the entertainment, lost from the education. God is so good at his creative ability that some people actually think we got here by accident. I want you to think about, really think about this. This is like, I'm using God as the example so you can see it as clear as it is, but this happens in the world all the time. We get so jacked up into the entertainment, we don't realize, no, you must be skilled as a creator, as a director, as a movie producer to put something on in front of me that I feel like I can't even go toilet and I want to go toilet. Please, guys, get that good at something. Get that good at your calling. Get that good at what God has ordained you to be. This is the portal to power. The portal to power is you and I showing up how God actually created us. Not how we've bought in to the lie identity that, yeah, we should kind of try. But I've been trying to read my Bible, but you know, when I read it, these words, like, it just confuses my brain. Bro, try some more, bro. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, because the more you try, more than the other guy who stopped where you just tried to stop, the more you're not going to be like that other guy. Does that make sense? The more you're going to have some substance. The more you're going to be able to say, no, I've got power with this thing. I know how this works now. I'm learning this thing. God is revealing this thing. God's opening this up to me. This is like a jack-in-the-box. I don't know if that's too old for some of you. A jack-in-the-box, right? So this is like a box with other boxes inside. And like the value comes out. The value pops out and says, hey, I'm here. But here's the funny thing. Some people have the same jack-in-the-box, but they never feel like the value ever pops out. Why? Because they don't know where the buttons to press. And Proverbs 25 tells us this. It says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the honor of kings. Who are the kings? You and I. The honor of kings to search it out. Proverbs 18 verse 1 might ring a bell again. Oh, wow, that's what you mean. Through desire, a man separates himself and seeks and intermeddles with all manner of wisdom. Yes, that's Proverbs 25 verse 2 mixing with Proverbs 18 verse 1. It's telling you, when you know this is for you, go hard. Go hard. Separate yourself and go hard. And I'm not talking about that spooky wooky separate yourself like a cult where you tell your friends, oh, I can't talk to you anymore. No, I'm just saying get so serious that your friends are like, no, he's about his business. No, she's about her business. No, that person, no. God's really showed them something that's stopping them from living like a low life. Is this helping someone? So let's get into this, right? Because I want to give you these 3 characteristics before we wrap up. But we're going to wrap up soon because of time, right? So we see in Proverbs 8, we didn't even get to verse 9. Look at me. All right, Proverbs 12, verse 8. A man shall be commended according to his wisdom, but he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised. Listen to verse 9. It says, he that is despised, hold on a minute. We just spoke about how someone will become despised. And now we're talking about he who is despised. Is everyone with me, right? Watch this. He that is despised but has a servant. Oh my gosh. So you just gave me 3 different places, right? So watch this. We got someone becoming, we got someone getting wisdom. So is it okay for us to call that person wise? Okay. So someone's getting wisdom, top of the totem pole, that person is wise, right? Then it says you can be pulled down. Okay. If you've got perversity in your heart, you're going to be despised. You're going to be pulled down, right? But then it says he that is despised and has a servant is actually better than another person who's despised. So what that means is on this rung of 3, there's this person here who's getting wisdom. I'm just going to put that GW. There's this person here who's fully despised. And there's this person here who's despised with a servant. Does that make sense? Yeah? Was that clear? If it wasn't, please someone tell me, right? All right? So Proverbs 12. Look at me with my numbers today. Proverbs 12, I'm reading verse 8 and 9 again. Because now I've drawn it. I want you to see it, right? So it says, verse 8, a man shall be commended, moved up according to his wisdom. So at the top of the totem pole is people who are operating with wisdom, wise. But he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised. So if your heart's perverse, you get pushed down. Okay. Then it says, he that is despised and have a servant, okay, is better than he that honoreth himself and lack of bread. So what do we understand here? We understand all of these positions now. We understand the last position is a person who's been moved down through means of being despised. But why? Because they have no bread. Okay. There's a bit more to it. I'll read the first part, but I'm going to show you why they have no bread is so powerful. It says they honor themselves and they have no bread, right? They honor themselves. Now, here's the thing that's interesting, right? The people at the bottom are the people that honor themselves and have no bread. What does that have no bread mean? It means they have nothing to show for the honor they gave themselves. Okay? So the work they do produces no real tangible fruit. Now, why is this important? It's important because Jesus told us in the New Testament, he said, by their fruit, you shall know them. By what people produce is how you recognize who they are, not by what they say. This is why the apostle said, I don't come to you with enticing words of man's wisdom. I come to you with demonstration and power. Why do you need power? Because power is the only way you know my fruit. Does this make sense? You can't know my fruit by what I say. This is why you can't just sit down in a seminar and listen to someone. Oh yeah, I know how to make $1 million now because I listened to a guy tell me how to make $1 million. I could tell you how to make $1 million now. Most of you in the next 90 days won't make $1 million. Why? Not because I didn't tell you the right formula. It's because you have no clue what to do. It's because you might be enlightened, but you're not necessarily empowered. Does this make sense? So how do you get empowered? You get empowered by not being focused on the words, but being focused on what the words produce. How the words produce. Not being focused on, oh, he's despised because he honored himself. No, but understanding, where have I honored myself? Where have I not produced bread? Where have I not produced fruit? Where have I not been actually active the way God wants me to be active? Okay? Now, this is super helpful because I'm going to give you 3 names, the 3 names I have anyway for these people, right? So my first name is the wise. Obviously, that's the person at the top of the totem pole. We saw them in verse 8, all right? The wise. And I think this is very important. And for those of you who want me to break down deeper each of these, just let me know and I'm willing to do that. We'll do that in the Q&A session. Sorry, guys on YouTube, right? We'll do that in the Q&A session if you want that, right? So here's what we got. We got the wise right at the top, okay? In the middle, we've got what I call the wishful, okay? The wishful. Now, what makes them wishful? Look at this. He says, if you're despised but with a servant, you're better than someone who honors themselves and has no bread, okay? If you're despised and with a servant. So the wishful are people who are despised, but they have a servant, right? Now, you might be thinking, Samuel, they have a servant. What does that mean? Like, how does that make them better than someone else? I'll tell you why, right? Does anyone remember in the New Testament where Jesus came across a centurion? Centurion means he's in charge of at least 100 people, right? And he makes his statement, right? Like, okay, in the world, when I was young and committing crime, we used to have this statement we learned from the TV, right? It was actually a movie, but the statement was follow the money, right? Anyone heard that before? Okay, so criminals tend to follow the money. Not only criminals, smart people also, right? But follow the money, okay? What do you mean by follow the money? If you see, like, by following the money, by doing what I used to do as a criminal when I was an adult and I was a believer, that's how I ended up quitting my job. Okay, because I sat down in my classroom one day. I used to be a teacher, teaching A-level and secondary maths, as well as a teacher trainer, teaching teachers how to teach. And I sat down in my classroom one day and I said to myself, you know what? Why don't I just follow the money like I used to do when I was a child and I was committing crime? And I said, okay, let me do that. Who funds all of these schools? And there's over 400 schools in London, right? All funded, right? All got money, all got resources, all taking children on trips, all selling uniform, all doing the thing, right? Stuff that some ministry should be doing, right? So I'm sitting in this school and I'm like, how is all this paid for? Then I'm like, yo, this is paid for by the government. Then I'm like, but the government don't generate revenue. They don't create anything. So I'm like, yo, how does the government get all their money? Then I'm like, yo, the government get their money from taxes. Then I'm like, okay, so if the government get all their money from taxes, what's the government's objective? The government's objective is to enlighten you enough so that you will be a high-paying wage slave. And then I was like, yo, I got to get out of here. Because I'm educating these children to come back and pay taxes rather than to be like an entrepreneur. What would an entrepreneur do? An entrepreneur will make the same amount of money, right? But they'll hire an accountant. And an accountant says, oh, bro, you're doing this all wrong. You would pay half the tax if you did it this way. And you're like, oh. And guys, what I'm talking about is not tax evasion, it's tax avoidance, right? Two different things, right? But the point is, the smartest people in the world hire smarter people than them in different areas in their world so that they operate at the highest level in each area in their world. But most people don't do that. Is this making sense? This is why you see young athletes, right? They get very rich and then get very poor very quick. Why? Because they don't hire the smartest people in the world that they need to arrange like their finances or like relationships or other areas. Is this making sense? This is why you have to have your head switched on and realize, yo, Marcus, being an engineer, yo, you're an asset to me, bro. You're a blessing. I need you in my corner. Yo, Emmanuel, doing digital marketing, bro. I need you, bro. You're an asset to me. Whereas if I'm like, no, yo, I made all this money, bro. I know what I'm doing, bro. I'm going to make my own, I'm going to make a track tomorrow. I'm just going to start, yo, I'm dropping beats now. Dropping tracks now, letting people know. I'm going to teach people how to make money the way I made money on my tracks. Then, oh, no, bro, you know what? I'm going to start marketing. I'm going to start telling everyone what I'm doing, like on my own. Why would I do that? When I could just say, yo, Marcus, look, take 50%, bro. Let's do this thing together. Yo, Emmanuel, take 50%, bro. Let's do this thing together. Yo, Joseph, take 50%. Let's do this thing together. Yo, Damani, like, bro, there's enough 50% to go around. Why? Because there's enough endeavors we're jumping into to go around. Does this make sense? But this is what the world has educated us out of. It's educated us out of what the people in Acts said we should be doing, which is going together house to house in fellowship, sharing our resources. They said, no, don't share your resources. Just keep your resources. And think about you and your wife and your children, and hopefully you leave something for your children's children. But the Bible said the opposite. The Bible said a good man, which means basic, low-level qualification, leaves an inheritance for his children's children. How are you going to do that without working in the Commonwealth system? You are not, which is why most people do not. Is this making sense to anyone? All right, hope it's helping. Hope it's helping. All right, now, with all that being said, let's jump into this. So the wishful, Jesus says to this centurion, he says, I've never seen, okay, let me connect the dots because some of you are going to get lost right now, right? So I said, I realized I needed to follow the money. I followed the money. I realized, hold on a minute, the reason why the government would need all of these schools is because all of these schools are educating us to be fools. And if the school keeps educating us to be fools, we keep giving them the money and the tools in order for them to keep building these schools. Makes sense, right? So I did, sorry, Sam's like, yeah, that was a lot, Sam. All right, cool. So I had to get up. Right? So I'm like, yo, I can't be accomplice to this treacherousness, right? So I left, right? Now, what did I do? I followed the money. Okay? Now, if you're really in tune biblically, you won't be following the money, right? Because the money is not really the thing that God gives us to follow. You'll be following the value. Okay? Now, in the Bible, for us as New Testament believers, what is the value? The value is faith. Faith is the currency of the believer. Okay? Hebrews chapter 12, Hebrews chapter 11 breaks this down very deeply. That's our currency, faith. All right? So we should be following the faith. Now, here's some things to help you follow the faith. It says that Abraham was the father of the faith. So what do you think you should be doing? I should be understanding how Abraham was operating. And the Bible says Abraham was rich. Sorry, this is like a little dig, sorry. But the Bible says that about Abraham, right? He said he had gold, silver, cattle. It said that, right? It didn't say rich spiritually, because that's what some pastors are going to try and con you with. Oh yeah, Abraham was rich spiritually. No, the Bible says after Abraham was rich, it says in gold, in silver, in cattle, in land. It tells you, okay? So there's nothing wrong with being rich in gold and silver and cattle and land. It's okay. Does this make sense? So I should be following the faith, right? So if I'm following the faith, Jesus shows up and says some astounding sentence whilst he's on this earth, and it was captured by one of the disciples and written in the book. He says, I've never seen any faith as great, no, not like this. Who was he talking about? A centurion, a non-believer. And how did he operate with faith? Because he said, I understand how authority, this word right here, I understand how authority, it's on here, right? Authority works. I'm the man who tells one to go and one to come. And when he goes, and when another comes, he comes. Listen, I'm trying to tell you something here, trying to give you a cheat code here, right? Authority and understanding of authority is one of the key ways to operate faith. This is why someone who's despised but has a servant. What's the clue? If you're despised but you have a servant, if you've got a servant, what does that mean? You have a level of authority, which means you must have an understanding to some degree of authority. That person can't be at the bottom of a totem pole. That's why in Proverbs, Solomon is trying to tell us, he's telling us, listen, you could be at the top, you could be wise, or you could be at the middle, you could be wishful, you could be someone who is despised, but because you've got a servant, you're still better than someone who's honoring himself and literally has nothing to show for it. Because you have a slight understanding of authority. Now, I don't want anyone to stay in the middle ground. I want people to be at the top. I say it all the time. I want to see you at the top and not from the top, right? But you've got to understand how this works. Because there are people who are wise at the top. Why? Because they're tapping into wisdom. How? Through the content they're engaging with, making sure that it's educational and making sure it's empowering more than enlightening. That's the path right there. That's the portal right there. For those of you who are like, Samuel, what's the portal? You said the portal. There's the portal right there. That's the path right there. Okay? There are people at the top who are wise. But then there's a whole bunch of people who understand the level of authority. So they're kind of all right. They're not at the bottom. Okay? But they're still being despised. And that's not where any of us want to be. And then there's the lowest level. This lowest level are those people who honor themselves. And as they honor themselves, they've got no bread. They've got nothing to show for their results. Okay? Excuse me. Like, you can think of some people who might come to your mind. A lot of people, like when I think about this, a lot of people come to my mind because we've had a lot of famous people in this world. I don't know when you were younger. Like, here's the funny thing. Right now, they say, I don't know if this is still accurate, but recently, the fastest man in the world was Usain Bolt, right? But 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it was Linford Christie. It was Daley Thompson. It was some other brother, Chris Akabusi maybe, right? These brothers were hitting like lightning, right? But here's the thing that's funny. Where are those guys now? Nobody remembers them the same way. Now, here's the thing. Is the reason we don't remember them because they're not doing anything? Is the reason we don't remember them because they're dead? These people I'm talking about aren't dead. I submit to you the reason we don't remember them is because they're not operating on these principles I'm talking about. Tapping into a level of wisdom that puts them at the top of the totem pole again and again and again in every other generation. Does this make sense? Go look at music. Same thing happens in music. There are some quote-unquote artists or producers who every single generation, is still at the top. How does this guy still produce an album and blow up and still sell platinum records? He's not in. He's not the in thing. How can he still sell? Same with athletes. There are athletes that hit the top. Maybe they disappear for a while, come back with some qualifications. Now he's a high-level coach. From high-level coach, high-level pundit. Just staying at the top. Now, here's a question. Is that the large majority or the small minority? Why? Why is it the small minority? I'll tell you why it's the small minority. Because most of them are not tapping into what I'm talking about here. Most of them might be wishful, but the large majority of them are not wise. Okay? So you can be wise, you can be wishful, or you can be those at the bottom who are wishy-washy. Okay? Because they got nothing to show for their work. They got nothing to show for their work. No matter what they do, nothing comes through. These are the people that hustle and hustle, but never get any results. And this is what you've got to think about. Do I want to be the wishy-washy? Do I want to be the wishful? Or do I just want to be the wise? And if you're someone who wants to be at the top, if you're someone who wants to be wise, according to Proverbs chapter 12, verse 8, there's a very simple and easy way for you to get there. And that is to focus on wisdom. Focus on wisdom. Don't focus on honoring yourself. Don't focus on who's following you. Don't focus on, oh, I've got this many. Guys, I just got followed by this person. Like, bro, it don't matter, bro. Because the same way that person hit follow, they can hit unfollow. Does that make sense? Bro, I just went to Dominica for 2 weeks. Like, I'm made. Okay, the same way you just went to Dominica for 2 weeks, you can then spend the next 2 years fighting to get a ticket to go to Mallorca. Life happens. But when you're focused on wisdom, you're not focused on the vanity metrics of the world. You're not focused on, oh, yo, this happened or that happened. You're focused on, yo, I'm a step closer to what God's called me to do. I'm a step closer to what God's pulling me through. So with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap up. For those of you who are joining us on YouTube, I pray you guys have been blessed. Feel free to write in the comments your key takeaway, and then we'll be able to share that in the community. And if you do have questions, feel free to write them also, and we can answer your questions inside of the comment section as well. Good day and God bless. All right, we're going to open it up now, guys, for our key takeaways, questions, and comments. What questions do you guys have? If you have questions, if you have key takeaways, if you have comments, let's go.